Hey everybody, what's up? Let's talk about Captain Fantastic. It's a film about a devoted father who is dedicated to raising his 6 kids with rigorous physical and intellectual education in order for them to become as intellectually capable and as able-bodied as possible. Basically, he is homeschooling them, and he is doing a mighty fine job at it, to be honest. I mean, these kids, they really do seem incredibly intelligent and knowledgeable and capable, but they live deep in the forests of the Pacific Northwest, completely isolated from society, without any technology. They have to hunt for food and stuff like that, but they seem to be pretty well off. They really seem happy, at least in the beginning. Tragedy eventually strikes, the mother of the children dies off-screen in a hospital, and the kids really want to attend her funeral, but the father is very hesitant at first, mostly due to the fact that his parent-in-laws don't really want him around, but eventually he agrees because of the fact that his wife was a Buddhist, and a Christian funeral was probably the last thing she would have wanted, so he decides that this would be a very good opportunity to basically sabotage the funeral. So they venture into the outside world, which of course will inevitably result in some major cultural clash, proving that this incredibly intelligent family who really seem to know everything about everything, when it just comes to basic human interaction, they are as clueless as can be. Now, most of the supporting characters in the film are far from what you would call three-dimensional. I'm talking about the children, the parent-in-laws, a love interest for the oldest boy of the family, some common friends of the father and his late wife, basically a family who have this very standard way of life, at least as far as American families go, like big house, 2 kids, kids playing video games at the table. Most of these characters are basically blank slates as far as character development goes, but that's really not a problem because all of them are given their moments to shine, all of them are given just enough to do to make them memorable and even quite charming. But this is really Viggo Mortensen's story. He is the one with the arc, he is the one who is at the crossroads in his life, going through a sort of midlife crisis, I would say, the one who really can't come to terms with the fact that a major chapter of his life is slowly coming to an end, not only because of his wife dying, but also because his kids are slowly starting to grow up and they're starting to not really see eye to eye with him anymore about this crazy lifestyle. The film goes through several tonal shifts. It's really a comedy drama. It's really like somewhere in between. Despite it being a road trip movie, it never really becomes this sort of barrage of laugh out loud hijinks, but it's not dramatic, not even in a dark comedic sense either. It doesn't really feel calculated to evoke sadness or sympathy. It's really like somewhere in between. And the way they do this is that they have situations that start off pretty funny, but ultimately lead to more serious discussions. Like there is a scene in which they are celebrating Noam Chomsky Day, because they are anti-capitalist and anti-Christian and all that, so obviously they can't be celebrating real holidays, they have to make up their own. And this is pretty hilarious, but the youngest son actually, he starts to protest, saying that, hey, what the fuck are we actually doing? Why can't we just celebrate Christmas just like everyone else in the world? And then the father is like, well, okay, if that's your opinion, explain yourself. Why do you think that way? And obviously the boy is at a loss for words. He can't really explain it, and you empathize with that. I mean, obviously you understand you couldn't really explain something like this to your family because it's something that's so incredibly ridiculous, it's so incredibly retarded that it's just stupid by itself. The main character is really representative of the film. He is sort of this kind of in-between person. He is not a bully, but he doesn't really shy away from putting his kids in harm's way or demanding them to behave in a certain way. He is a loving father. He loves his kids very much. That much is absolutely clear. But at the same time, he is not this type of person who really wants or really likes to express his feelings. I don't really think he considers them important. At the same time, you really have to admire his dedication to commit his life to raising his kids and to really try to give them the best life, or at least the best life imaginable to him. His wit and intelligence are incredibly commendable, but at the same time you really feel the need to condemn him for basically forcing this lifestyle upon his kids who really don't seem to have much say in the matter, and depriving them of education of a different form, one that's equally as essential as knowing how to hunt and cook your own food and make your own clothes. It's basically the school of life, the education each and every one of us can only learn through life experience. It's the one that the world teaches you. These are the questions the film really asks, what is the most healthy and ethical way to live your life? Is it fair to force your views and lifestyle onto others, especially your kids, without really giving them the chance to choose for themselves? The film is also about there being more to things than meets the eye, and how not only is it important to talk about certain things with your family, with your friends, with your loved ones, it's also very important to know when, but most importantly, how to talk about them. There's a very funny scene when they're on the bus, and one of the older daughters is reading Lolita, and she is talking about how she feels that the main character of the book, who is an older man, basically is taking advantage footage of an underage girl basically raping her. And then I think the youngest daughter asks, like, what is rape? And then the father answers, it's when a person, usually a man, forces another person, usually a woman, to have sexual intercourse. And then she asks, what is sexual intercourse? And then he says, it's when a man sticks his penis into a woman's vagina. And then she asks, like, why would anybody do that? That's where they pee. And then his answer is, technically, women don't really pee through their vaginas. They pee comes from the urethra. And obviously all of this is true, of course, but this is really not the way you should be talking to your kids about these subjects. It's really not the way to, like, break the ice, you know what I mean? You know, his attempts at being incredibly honest and detailed and direct is admirable. And yes, indeed, we should be talking about sex and death and disease and cursing as openly as possible with our kids. But again, knowing when and how to talk about them is really important. I do have some issues with this film, however, most of them having to do with the very last act, basically like the last 20 minutes. It becomes this sort of Lord of the Rings, Return of the King type of situation, where the film really slows down, becomes very sluggish, and after the 90-minute mark, there was a moment when I really thought the film was going to end, but then, nope, it goes on. And after like 10 minutes, another moment happens, and I'm thinking, oh, okay, so now it's going to end. Nope, still doesn't end, goes on for another 10 minutes. And every ending felt more tacked on than the previous one. It becomes very slow, very sluggish. There are also some cliches, like characters shaving their beards or cutting their hair to signify that they changed, that they grew up, that they matured. Really wasn't a big fan of that. And also the film really loses some of its realism during this last act. Now this film, not that it's a very realistic film, but during this last act, man, I mean, these characters really commit some actions that in the normal world would have had some very dire consequences. But here in the film, it just doesn't happen. And it kind of took me out a little bit. It felt a little bit unnecessary. I really felt that the film could have ended sooner and it would have been fine. Bah. And Sweet Child of Mine by Guns N' Roses rears its ugly head in this film as well, and surprisingly enough, it didn't irritate the crap out of me. God damn it, it's one of the worst songs in the world. Obviously, it's not in its original form in the film, and it does like kind of suit the story maybe a little bit, but it's such a shame that a film which had such an excellent pace and avoided cliches so well during its first 90 minutes really sunk to such a low during its last 20. But it's still a film I would highly recommend. It's even with my criticisms here at the end, it's still one of the best films I have seen from 2016. So definitely give it a chance is what I'm saying. Thanks for watching my review. As always, I will see you later with other reviews, folks. Until then, stay awesome. Goodbye.